Since 1968, the use of Native American imagery and mascots in sports has been up for debate in the U.S. The NCIA, or National Congress of American Indians, launched a Change the Mascot campaign with the goal of eradicating all such offensive imagery and stereotypical imagery in sports. Since the start of this movement, over 2,000 mascots have been changed, but roughly, unfortunately, over 1,000 still remain, and most notably of these are the Washington Redskins, the Cleveland Indians, Chicago Blackhawks, and Kansas City Chiefs. These four teams are more widely scrutinized for their usage of offensive mascots due to the stage they hold at the professional level in their respective sports. So, in the next slide we see, before moving forward, I believe it's important to dive a little bit into the history of mascots. So mascots originated as a sort of good luck charm of sorts used to represent organizations and especially corporations, but the idea really took off when it came to sports because, as is unique to sports, mascots are key in most merchandising and marketing campaigns, and fans really rally behind their team's mascots and heavily associate themselves with it. So when it comes to the professional teams at hand during this controversial issue, these strong mascot associations can become extremely problematic. So through the history of mascots, we've seen progression from animals to two-dimensional cartoons and fantasy characters to real-life people and groups. Some of these include cowboys, pirates, and as the purpose of the presentation is, Native Americans. So with the other two groups I mentioned, cowboys and pirates are real groups, but not ones you would typically come across in your day-to-day life. Similarly, organizations who use groups of people as their mascots tend to characterize them by following common stereotypes associated with the group. For example, cowboys being associated with a cowboy hat, boots, a lasso, anything like that is a stereotype. But obviously we don't hear much fuss from cowboys or pirates about their use as mascots. But I think we can all determine that Native Americans is a much different case. So in the next slide we see that opponents of the Change the Mascot campaign that was launched by the NCIA claims that the use of Native imagery is meant to be positive and symbolize the strong qualities of strength, bravery, camaraderie that are associated with Native Americans. And there actually is an example of a group that has approval. It's the Florida State Seminoles, who have written approval from the chief of the Seminole tribe, claiming that it's an honor to be represented by them. However, as we'll see, according to the vast majority of Native Americans who, without negotiation, are being used as a mascot, it's nowhere near honorable. Seeing non-Native American fans paint up in red face, use the tomahawk chop chant, or further just appropriating their culture is really to be expected when a professional organization uses that group as a mascot. And this cultural appropriation generated through the imagery used by teams is just further proof that this movement isn't an overstatement of political correctness from a more soft, sensitive modern society. It's really an issue that should be changed. So to understand this a little more, we see in the next slide, we must further get into the damage stereotypes can really cause. So stereotyping groups of people based on race isn't a new idea in American history. We've most notably seen it with slavery in the following Jim Crow era, and I think it'd be hard today to find anyone who doesn't see issues with the characterization that took place then of Black Americans or the use of any offensive racial slurs to describe them. The difference with Native Americans is that they have even less representation to defend them on a larger scale in today's society. So not very common knowledge, but redskin is actually an Oxford Dictionary defined racial slur. And as you see in the picture, the Cleveland Indians' Chief Wahoo logo is no different than the extremely offensive blackface we've seen during the Jim Crow era. It's a blatant characterization of a Native American that's extremely offensive when you look at it from their perspective. So even if, as opponents claim, the imagery is intended to be positive, damage is still being done because the furthering of any stereotype creates preconceived notions of a culture who has no control over the way people perceive them. And with the scale and meaning that we give sports in modern society, they have an especially greater responsibility to positively protect and represent the underrepresented groups and ban all offensive imagery. However, action is still to be taken. So to summarize, Native Americans have been an underrepresented and mistreated group for all of American history. And before conducting research, I didn't have a preconceived notion on this issue. I was aware of the controversy, but not aware of just how offensive some of this imagery really is in sports. So I hope this presentation has been as eye-opening for you as it was for me. I believe it's completely unacceptable that action is yet to be taken on a professional scale because some of these uses are just blatantly racist and the excuses being made are infuriating. Dan Snyder, who's the owner of the Washington Redskins, has come out and said and stood by his refusal to even open a dialogue on the issue, claiming that the people who take offense should look at it from his perspective. The audacity of this claim is just frankly sickening, and it's my opinion it's time for the league to take action and step in. As the NCAA has said during their campaign, they want all of these mascots and imagery to be eradicated, and they want the leagues to make sure that they're on the right side of American history. And I think that's exactly right. Thank you.